Welcome back. Do you shop on Amazon? A whole lot of us do, but have you stopped to think about what President Trump has been saying about the retail behemoth? That Amazon has been driving other retailers out of business. It doesn't deserve the bulk rate shipping from the post office. Is President Trump, however, really that concerned about smaller retailer companies? Or is it the fact that Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, and it's the Post which is breaking story after story about Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election and contacts between the Trump campaign and the Russians? Joining us for more are Michael Snipes, an economics instructor at USF Sarasota Manatee, Frank Alcock, a political science professor at New College, and Richard Stern, our own ABC7 business commentator. And Richard, I'm going to start with you with the impact that the president's multiple tweets, I believe 6 tweets over the last week or so, has had on Amazon stock. Put it right up on the screen.
For perspective, there you can see it. The Amazon, can you give me that number? I'm sorry, I just can't see that far. Getting old. Amazon year to date is up 23.75%, while the S&P is up less than 1%. The 1-year return, I believe will be next. The 1-year return is Amazon up 63.fraction%, while the S&P is up just under 13. The 5-year return for Amazon, more than 40%. Now that's an annualized figure. That's not a total figure, that's annualized. That versus the S&P being up by 13%. But, funny you should ask.
Over the last 10 days, or since March 12th, Amazon stock down by 10.25%.
Correct.
So there is no debate whether the president's comments really have had an impact on the stock price for Amazon.
No question about it.
You know, Jeff Bezos, Frank, is the richest man in the world. Is it a good idea to pick a fight with the richest man in the world who just happens to own one of the most influential newspapers in the world?
Whether it's a good idea, whether or not it's a good idea to pick a fight, I don't think this president has seen anybody as off limits. Richest man in the world, party icons, the Pope. And so if he is angry about something, he lashes out, and time will tell whether or not there's any consequence for him.
Michael, in terms of the economy, we have a good economy now, although arguably there are issues in terms of middle income wages and so forth. But how dangerous is it for a president to pick on a particular company?
It is unusual. And one of the things that you're going to see when something like that happens is the stock price change, because really a lot of the times what the price of a stock really reflects is information. And kind of the better the information is, the more complete the information is, the more accurate the price will be. And certainly whether or not the president is kind of personally attacking a company, that's going to show up in the price.
Richard, in your long distinguished career,
Thank you.
How many times have you seen a president go after a particular company?
Not in my memory. I certainly have seen them go after the oil business, or they'll go after the automobile manufacturers, things like that, but I don't recall ever seeing them go after one specific company.
Obama went after Staples very, very briefly.
In what way?
I think Staples, I forgot what their reaction was. It was Obamacare, and kind of went a little beyond the pale in terms of their reaction to it. And it was just simply one, I think, statement of the president.
Basically that Staples was saying that it was going to hire less or fewer people there. Do you recall what the public reaction was?
It was a single statement. I think it was noted and everybody moved on. It wasn't a vendetta on the part of the president continually going after a Staples. So we're talking about very, very different things here, I think. And the case with this president, too, I don't think it's, he doesn't like Jeff Bezos because he owns the Washington Post. I think that's what he's mad at, but yet he's attacking the economic model of Amazon. Probably not because he's upset about the economic model for Amazon. He's upset at the Washington Post.
But Michael, there have been people who said, look, the president has a point in terms of what Amazon is doing to retailers, and one of the people who has been saying that is Bernie Sanders, not a real ally of the president.
Right. And that is an argument that can be made. You can almost kind of think of Amazon as kind of an online Walmart. They're just so big, and they can offer prices that are lower than what a lot of brick and mortar retailers can offer. That would put pressure on smaller businesses. It's a lot more convenient. Sometimes you can get it for cheaper. that would put pressure on smaller businesses.
Okay, we are just getting warmed up, and we'll have much more on the president's war on Amazon right after we check the First Alert weather. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are talking about President Trump's war on Amazon, and joining us for more are Michael Snipes, an economics instructor at USF Sarasota Manatee, Frank Alcock, a political science professor at New College, and Richard Stern, our own ABC7 business commentator. Let me proffer a statement or a question by a dear conservative Republican friend of ours who said, why are we talking about this? This is so last week. Look at everything that has happened this week in Washington with the president and with Congress and Paul Ryan and yada, yada, yada. The question is, whoever wants to answer it, is there a long-term impact for the president going after this company? Frank?
Well, I don't think that there would be a long-term impact. The numbers that we saw at the very beginning already kind of start to indicate that the stock price for Amazon has already started to bounce back from the dip that we saw last week in response to what the president said. So long term, I think like we were talking during the break, it's probably just the president blowing off steam. It falls short of any kind of direct action that would kind of bump it up into a whole nother level.
What would change that? What would change the possibility of Amazon being in any kind of danger from a sustained presidential campaign?
You're dealing with a president who, is sort of unprecedented, so I don't know that I can answer that perfectly, but I will say that Amazon, in my judgment, is doing a lot of things right. Obviously, they've been incredibly successful because they're giving people what they want. They're giving them delivery on a timely basis. And the positive also is, guess what? Walmart.com, Target.com, all of these companies are realizing what Amazon has done, and they're trying to, in their own way, mirror it. So it's actually a terrific business model.
Frank, you'll notice that Jeff Bezos and Amazon has not responded to the president's tweet storm. In fact, a communications expert says, I don't think there's any benefit actually engaging with the president on this.
Number one, I don't think there's any benefit engaging the president on this if I'm Jeff Bezos. I think he's doing what he should be doing.
But what? Let me ask you this: what's the danger to the president? Because if Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the entire world and can make sure the Washington Post is as well funded as any newspaper in America, one would argue the Washington Post, which has a gold standard in terms of journalistic integrity, but they're certainly not going to shrink in terms of its continuing investigations.
And I think that there is some risk there for the president. I think, again, the integrity and the credibility of the Post is pretty important. So if they run afoul of over-ramping up, that could hurt them. But I think their coverage and the scrutiny of the president will be relentless, and they'll have Bezos will have the resource to do that. And so he need not speak. He'll just let his reporters continue to do their work. And I don't think there's much of a threat unless there's something that the president does through executive action that disrupts their business model. If that were to happen, certainly you would see a reaction on the value of Amazon, but that would set a precedent that beyond a lot of bluster, this president might intervene in ways out of spite with major companies that would, again, be a very, very big story.
All right. I have a question for you, Richard, and you, Michael, and it's one in the same. We have seen the stock market after a pretty long period of sustained growth actually kind of tumble a little bit based upon certain things that the president has said. Is that having a larger impact on the stock market right now?
Well, believe it or not, I'll answer that by saying, let's see what tomorrow brings. And the reason I say that is we're just starting now to get earnings for the most recent quarter. And JP Morgan's going to come out with their earnings, Citi's going to come out with their earnings, Wells Fargo. And what's interesting is, will the market react to those earnings? Because in the last 30 to 45 days, the market is 100% driven by current news. Has nothing to do with mathematics. It's
and
totally
usually
current news.
Right, and usually say it's driven by the earnings and not current news. So this is something just a little bit different.
Absolutely different.
Overall, Michael, what kind of impact could this have on the economy in general?
Well, it's really just the president kind of blowing off steam at one particular company. I can't really see any way it would have an impact on the economy as a whole. And again, if we think about stock prices really just kind of reflecting news and information and information about a company, really what is going to be more important for a stock price is how profitable that company is, right? Exactly how much we're earning. That's going to be a lot more important in determining the value of a company, the value of a stock, than something that the president tweets.
Does anybody here actually believe that the criticisms that the president is making towards Amazon in terms of driving smaller retailers out, or the issue with the post office, is going to maybe change things for the better and force Congress to do things that many would like to see it in terms of creating a situation where other retailers have a better chance or at least a more level playing field?
Well, his discussion or his talks or his statements about the post office really by and large just aren't true, because the post office doesn't really collect taxpayer money. He claims that it's the taxpayer bailing them out because they're shipping their goods for a lot lower, and that's not true. The post office doesn't collect any public revenue, and at the same time they're paying the same rate as every other large company that does a lot of shipping does. So there's really not a whole lot of truth in what he's been saying about the post office. But with respect to smaller businesses, that's not really kind of the approach that he's taken. He's really kind of more approached the post office than anything else. And there might actually be a grain of truth to the statement that it could affect smaller businesses, but at the same time, that's always been a concern.
Frank?
Yeah, no, I think there's certainly the model. This is, Joseph Schumpeter, very famous, political economy writer from the last century. This is creative destruction, and so it's a very, very successful business model that Amazon pursues. But there are a lot of casualties to it, and there are pain that comes along with their success for small businesses. If there was something about the Amazon business model that they were receiving preferential treatment that their company and other businesses were not, and there was something that the president wanted to do to fix that, to make things more fair, then this could be very impactful. But I don't think that that's what's happening here.
Right.
I don't think this is not what this is about.
So if I understand all of you, what we have right now is talk, which has had a short-term effect on Amazon stock price, but we have seen this president arguably do other regulatory moves that do infect certain businesses. And I'm thinking about AT&T's purchase of Time Warner, which includes CNN, which is now the Justice Department is litigating. That is a real decision by the Justice Department, is it not, to stop or go after a merger? Yeah. And some would argue it's because the president doesn't like what CNN does.
Well, it's not the first time that the government has stepped in to try and prevent mergers, so it's not completely unprecedented that that particular aspect is happening. The motivation as to why this merger might be trying to be stopped, that might be unique. But the fact that there's a merger that's trying to be stopped, that's happened several times throughout history.
Yeah, I would agree. The president does have a lot of discretion. He can intervene on mergers. That's not what we're talking about with Amazon. It's more about their model. Again, if he was somehow to force the issue and extract a higher price per package, then that would be impactful. But I don't even know if he's thinking about going there. He's blowing off steam. So.
I think one thing I just want to say is Amazon is being penalized, or could be, for being very entrepreneurial. They basically built this business. Remember, they started out selling books. Amazon was a bookseller, period, the end. And they've grown just a phenomenal company, and for them to be penalized for building a better mousetrap sure doesn't make any sense to me.
Does this pretty much go away with the next earnings report from Amazon?
Well, it depends on the president. Certainly the earnings report the last quarter was excellent. Most people believe it will continue to be excellent going forward. So the answer is it really depends on the president, because right now Amazon's reacting to news, not earnings.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. We want to thank our guests for being here tonight. Michael Snipes, an economics instructor at USF Sarasota Manatee, Frank Alcock, a political science professor at New College, and Richard Stern, our own ABC7 business commentator.